Good evening. Would everyone please rise for the General Committee meeting to order in the prayer and pledge of allegiance.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you this evening grateful for the many blessings you continue to bestow upon our school district. As we approach the holidays, we pray that our staff and students will take time to thank you for their families and their health, as well as the opportunity to be a part of a school system that is student-focused and indebted to staff members for their hard work and dedication to their students. We ask that you be with those who are traveling next week and pray that you safely return our students and staff to us after the week off. These things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Ms. Lemoyne, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Yes. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Ms. Voce.
Mrs. Acevedo? Here. Mr. Campbell? Here. Dr. Kraft? Here. Mr. Egan? Here. Mr. Gaines? Here. Mr. England? Here. Mrs. Dysart?
Here.
Mrs. Lemoyne?
Here.
Dr. Lewis? Here. Mr. Long?
Here.
And Mr. Warren?
Here.
Thank you, Ms. Voce. Before we go to the first item on the agenda, we have a point of privilege. Mr. England?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Dysart. I'd like to take this opportunity to wish a few people a happy birthday that's on this board. We passed it up a couple months, so let's bring everything up to date. So, so for Ms. Lemoyne, happy birthday. Okay, and then and Miss Diana Dysart, happy birthday. That you was
Thank you, Mr. England.
and also Mr. Carl Gaines, happy birthday, Mr. Gaines.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, Ms. Dysart.
Thank you very much, Mr. England. We have a lot of birthdays, and as we've said many times, every birthday is a good birthday. Yes, yes. And at this time, I'd like to take a moment of silence in honor of Bonnie Booth, who was Mr. Barnett, who a former board member's daughter, and Bonnie was not only a graduate of Andrew Jackson High School, went up through the ranks. Her daughter Crystal went up through the ranks and was a teacher with us, and Bonnie was very, very involved in our school system. So if we could take a moment of silence, please. And Bob Arsenault, thank you, Dr. Kraft, Bob Arsenault was one of my teachers at Andrew Jackson High School and was a supervisor with us for many, many years. He taught for many years, was a supervisor in our system, and just a gem of a person. Moment of silence, please, for Bonnie Booth and Robert Bob Arsenault. Thank you. And our deepest condolences and sympathies go out to the Booth family and to the Arsenault family. If I could just add something about Captain Bob, as many of us knew him as, he was quite a character, and you know, he always made people around this office smile. He kept you smiling, and he was just, you know, education was in his blood, and he gave many, many years to education. So, Ms. Voce.
I just have to echo. Oh, it's not on. I'm so sorry. I just have to echo that about Bob Arsenault. Worked with him for many years here in the central office. A wonderful man, and made major contributions to our system, along with his wife Joanne, who taught with us as well and is currently retired. So my condolences go to his family. And Bonnie Booth, I remember when she was a high school student at Andrew Jackson High School, and I was teaching at Chalmette High School, and I had run a young man for the state presidency, and he won, and Bonnie from Andrew Jackson won the state vice presidency. So I was privileged for Beta Club, and I used to drive them all around the state so they could perform their official duties, speaking at different events and organizations. So I got to be quite close with her, and it was so wonderful when she had a child of her own, Crystal, who then came throughout our school system and taught with us for a while and now has her own family. So my heartfelt personal condolences go out to both the Booth family as well as the Arsenal family.
Thank you, Ms. Voce. Anyone else? Okay, on a brighter note and happier is are the super news, and is hey Jack. Jack is here to present super news tonight.
Hello.
Good evening.
How y'all doing? Alex is out of town on a business trip, so I am going to introduce the super news. Alex, Barry, and I are excited. This is our 15th episode of Super News. And what's good about it is we are showcasing all our school activities and academic, all the positive things that's happening. So Barry Lamorne is going to go ahead and run the 15th episode of Super News. Here we go.
And now from the desk of the superintendent's office, it's time for Super News.
Hi, I'm Alex Schneider.
Hi, and I'm Barry Lamorne, and welcome to this edition of Super News. We'll start things off with some good news as our school performance scores continue to rise. Recently, the Louisiana Department of Education released school and district school performance scores. The district scored a 98.3, an increase from the prior year, ranking us as one of the better districts of the state. Third time in a row, Shaman High School was named as an A school, a reflection of the excellent education being provided in grades 9 through 12, as well as all of the great work done in our elementary and middle schools. Thanks to all of our hardworking students and teachers for your efforts and our success.
And speaking of success, the streak continues for over 25 years. The St. Bernard Parish School District has received awards of excellence from the Government Finance Officers Association and the Association of School Business Officials for our impeccable bookkeeping. Over the years, the school district has been tasked with handling hundreds of millions of dollars, and thanks to the work of David Fernandez and our business department, we have been commended for our responsible and ethical use of funds. Never once has there been findings of non-compliance, need for audit adjustments, or suggestions for changes in internal control. What does all that mean? The St. Bernard Parish School District takes its responsibility as financial stewards of taxpayer dollars very seriously. And speaking of fiscal responsibility, here is information about the upcoming millage renewal.
On November 18th of this year, the voters of St. Bernard Parish will have the opportunity to vote on 3 propositions regarding millages assessed in support of our school system. To help us better understand these propositions, here is Superintendent Doris Voce.
There are 3 propositions on the ballot that were passed decades ago, and every 10 years we have to go back to the taxpayers to renew these millages. So they're not any new taxes, they're just our current taxes that we're asking taxpayers to renew. What it does is finance the salaries and benefits of our employees. It's to purchase new school buses, to provide instructional materials and supplies and textbooks, and to help us maintain the facilities we have to provide those opportunities for our students. It's very important that we all get out to support our students and our community.
The ballot for this election is very small, so voter turnout is crucial. Thanks for all you do to support public education, and remember, it takes a village to educate a child. And speaking of good streaks, for the 4th consecutive year, Shaman High School boasts being home to a National Merit semifinalist. Megan St. Angelo is one of 16,000 students in the nation to receive this prestigious honor, and we are proud to recognize her for her exemplary work in the classroom.
I would like to thank everyone who has supported me, including the faculty, teachers, my friends, and my family, for helping me get to the point I am now.
In other news, our schools recently celebrated Red Ribbon Week, which focused on building student awareness about issues concerning drugs and alcohol. This year's theme was Your Future is Key, so stay drug-free. Here is just a glimpse of the number of programs and events that were all part of the Red Ribbon outreach.
Also taking place recently were the many fall events and activities throughout our school district. From the wildly successful Boo on the Bayou that saw 3,000 people in attendance to the recent Literacy Weeks and Guest Reader Days, our schools and community are true partners in education.
The silly turkey swinging from a vine, gobble gobble, wibble wobble, whoops, now there are only 9. Very good.
Have you had a chance to check out the planetarium yet? The month of December has several great shows at the MoMA Center for both kids and adults. From black holes to the Nutcracker Dancing Light Show, there is something for everyone. Show dates are December 14th, 15th, 16th, and 19th. Visit our website and Facebook page to find out more information about this out-of-the-world facility.
And now it's time for some of our teacher features as presented by the members of our school board.
A legend at Chalmette High School. This month we salute Mr. Tom Duggar for his unwavering dedication to the students of Chalmette High. Mr. Duggar is one of the finest English teachers in our school district. Alongside teaching, Mr. Duggar also devotes his spare time to producing first-rate plays and being a senior class sponsor. He is truly one of a kind, and we are lucky to have him.
You saw that title page, usually at the very bottom, they named the publisher. And there's cities and stuff with the publisher. You don't need all the cities, you just need the publisher.
Mrs. Arnona at Arlene Miro Elementary School is our elementary teacher feature this month. Mrs. Arnona serves as the kindergarten teacher leader and the school's webmaster. She does an excellent job of keeping all parents, stakeholders, and community up to date on all the great things happening at the school. The St. Bernard Parish School Board is grateful to have such a positive and inspiring educator as a member of our teaching corps.
Good. Our volunteers are the heart of our schools. This month we'd like to have a shout out to Mr. Rocky Barrow, who volunteers his time at the athletic teams at St. Bernard Middle School. Mr. Barrow assists us with coaching volleyball, football, soccer, and softball. Thanks to you, Mr. Barrow, for helping our Eagles soar.
Well, that will just about do it for this edition of Super News. But before we go, we want to give a quick shout out to the Chalmette High School girls volleyball team that went undefeated in district play this year and made the playoffs for the 29th time in 30 years. Our boys football team that made it to the playoffs again, and our CHS band and auxiliary groups who excelled at that recent regional LMEA band competition, earning all superior ratings for the first time in 30 years. It's a great time to be an owl.
Hoot that! Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Super News, where we always let the Super News roll. We'll see you next time.
Okay, thank you for the Super News. That was a great production, and we appreciate it. Thanks to the men of Penn, Mr. Lemoyne, Mr. Jackson, and thank you, Alex, also. A lot of great news to share with our schools and all of our groups. Thank you. Okay, next item. Anyone on Super News to add? Okay. They were super. And hoot that. That was good. Very clever. Manapan. Next item is an update on the cultural arts activities. And we have Mr. Charles Cassar. Good evening, Mr. Cassar.
Good evening, Mrs. Dysart and everyone. As always, a pleasure to be with you folks sharing fun and exciting times in our amazing rebuilding community. You know, it's so astounding when you think 12 years ago where we were and look at where we are today. It is truly an exciting time to be in St. Bernard Parish, and especially in St. Bernard schools. Jeannie was kind enough to put together some information for you, ladies and gentlemen. There are a lot of activities taking place. Our schools are being asked to participate in more and more things, which is certainly exciting. And it does open doors in two ways. One, it gives our students opportunities to experience the community and holiday season locally, and it also helps the community understand the wonderful talents that we have within our schools. So it's a wonderful two-way experience. In summary of things taking place, last year President McGinnis started a Christmas at the Complex project, and they contacted me and asked both last year and this year for guidance in the date selection so it would not create conflicts. So on December 1st, there will be Christmas at the Government Complex, and there is a running list on page 2 of the groups that will be participating. And I'm real excited to share that our teachers are very willing and anxious to share the talents of their students. It's a lot of work getting kids costumed, prepared to either dance, to sing, or to play, but they're ready and willing to do so. On Saturday, December 2nd, the Los Isleños bonfire will take place, which is also included in your packet. The listing will include Goche and St. Bernard Middle, Lacoste, Miro, Andrew Jackson, Trist, and Davies. And that program, if any of you ever have the opportunity, it is a really unique and rich experience. You're on museum grounds. Our children perform on historic property, on balconies, and it is a real celebration of everything that's wonderful about our lower part of the community. As Dr. Lewis, we would say down the road, right?
Yes.
You know, there's no question. It is a beautiful, beautiful experience. There are some limitations I think it's important to understand. Because it's an evening program, there's only so many time slots, so we try to alternate giving all of the kids, both up the road and down the road, an opportunity to participate. Unlike the next program, which involves everyone, which is the Dockville Children's Christmas Festival, that's an all-day project, and as a result, all of our schools participate there because there's an all-day opportunity. That will begin at 10 o'clock in the morning and will go till about somewhere around 4 o'clock, with Trist concluding that part of the program. And then Annalise will pick up at 5:30 and do a classical Christmas recital. And this is kind of a fun evening gown, tuxedo, big music opportunity. Much of the music that was performed for the New Orleans opera performance will be revisited there, so it'll be an opportunity for the community to see our kids do amazing music, not just the typical Christmas music, but truly arts-based kinds of things. And then truly a wonderful event, which will be Chalmette High School's Christmas program, which will take place Thursday, December 7th, and on Friday, December 8th. Those tickets literally fly because there's such a wonderful program presented, so many talented young people that are involved. So ladies and gentlemen, if you're interested, please give Shelby a call. That way we can make sure we have VIP tickets waiting for you all, because you don't want to miss that program. This year's theme is Christmas Around the World, and we have from Russian music through Hispanic to Old English. It's going to be a real fun sharing of Christmas as it's shared all around the world. So we invite you all to be a part of that. Besides these programs, which really center on the community side of what we do as schools, all of our schools have opportunities to participate in various programs, and those things are still in the process of being worked through. In addition to these particular opportunities, they're still at the elementary level, where children are going to City Park and participating there, and some of our middle schools are performing at hotels at lunchtime, and sort of spreading the wealth of who our kids are and the fine talent that they have under great leadership of our teachers. Additionally, at the Dockville Children's Christmas Festival on December 9th, our art teachers will be presenting art from each of their schools. They are doing two things differently, well, maybe three things differently this year. One, they're producing a calendar to represent an artwork from each of the schools in our school community. There's a commemorative poster for the first time that we're doing. Miss Sarah Felt is working on that, and it'll celebrate all the names of our schools that are participating. And we're going to have a real craft and art effort taking place on site, even more than previously, so that kids will have the opportunity to work on an ornament or some kind of fun thing that they can take. But very importantly, they're going to get to meet their middle school art teacher and the high school art teacher, so that we begin to build that relationship, so that kids see themselves as artists, and we can celebrate that concept of community. Does that make sense? So that's a real development, I think, that we've been able to achieve. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, on Saturday, that Saturday morning, if we can have a delegation of board members to come for between 10 and 11, we're going to do the school board judging for our artwork to be sent to the School Board Association to represent one elementary piece, one middle school piece, and one high school piece. Okay? And the Super News touched on the accomplishment of Mr. Rusk, but I'd like to hit that a little bit more, ladies and gentlemen, with you. It's so easy to look at something like that and not realize the magnitude of time and work that is going into that. Mr. Rusk is such a devoted employee who lives, thinks, breathes band. And this has been a dream that he has worked on since Katrina. And to see all of those superiors finally take place is a wonderful thing. So when you see him, please share your enthusiasm, because it is no small accomplishment. And this is a rather strong statement, ladies and gentlemen, but I've been doing this a long time. And there was a very long time where it was in the interest of LMEA not for public schools to receive those levels of awards. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It was very important that public schools not be given that level of achievement. And it was a fight beyond belief. And for him to achieve that is truly a landmark opportunity for our community in the music band environment especially. So truly a wonderful thing.
Talk about the different groups like drumline, auxiliary group, drum major, those kinds of things.
And you realize, you guys, each of those components are judged. So, band can be outstanding, but if the percussion part is not there, you get points taken off there. They're looking for what's wrong with you, not for what's right with you. So that's such a difficult thing. And of course, the other components, the charmers participating in all of those pieces working together. A drum major that both looks the part, that can keep time, that does all the parts that are necessary. It's almost an impossibility. It really is. And to achieve that was truly wonderful. Truly wonderful.
Because the scoring, a 1 is superior. So you have all the different groups, because I've been to a few of them, and
yes, indeed.
And all the different groups, they'll grade the drum major separately, they'll grade the drum line separately, they'll grade the auxiliary groups. This particular group, and each one gets a rating, which would be a 1, which is superior, or 2 would be the next level, and then 3, and then down. So in order to achieve what Mr. Rusk and his groups have, every single group had to score 1, had to score superior. So we have in the past had every group but one
always 1,
would get a 2, and everybody else would get a 1, and those types of things. So it's very hard to get every individual group and section to get that superior rating, to get that overall rating. So
truly an amazing accomplishment. And then, additionally, at Chalmette, Annalise Cassar brought students to participate in the New Orleans opera competition. Ladies and gentlemen, truly probably one of the most white glove art experience that takes place across the metro New Orleans area. And we had 4 students that placed, which was an amazing accomplishment. NOCA had 8, Chalmette had 4, and no other schools in the metro New Orleans area had any more than 1. So that's an amazing accomplishment. And yeah, truly. And then one more piece to that. Kayla Gonzalez, a young woman who's grown up down in the lower part of the community, went to Goche and then to St. Bernard Middle. Kayla was imagine, in this group of amazing young men and women vocally, she was the first student to have to stand to sing. She gets halfway through the song and they stop her and ask her to, now let's do another song. Kayla was our student who made it to the semifinals. She's an amazing talent. She represented us so very well, and all of the students there did an incredible job. So truly a kudo for the effort that's there. And, there's much to say about that. Number one, both Ms. Voce and Mr. Warner having the vision to be willing to create the class, that vocal lab that takes our best talented vocalists and work with them intensely to get to that point. Because the way this music works for them, with some detail, is that in order to be an art song, to participate in this level of music, what's being played has to be one melody, and what's sung is another melody. So you're not singing to an accompaniment. It's 2 things that's occurring at the same time. So your brain is registering 2 different sets of music at the same time. An incredibly difficult thing to do. So quite an accomplishment for Chalmette High School, breaking through the barrier of just who and what we are in St. Bernard, if you understand what I'm saying. So pretty exciting, ladies and gentlemen. The next piece of business, I think, which is another incredibly important accomplishment. Ms. Voce was kind enough to ask if I would talk about this evening. Metropolitan Human Service District, ladies and gentlemen, if you recall when I spoke to you about Red Ribbon Week, I briefly mentioned services that are beginning to come online. Today, Ms. Jeannie, my secretary, and I, and a representative from Metropolitan had a meeting at the clinic in Araby, the old bank building, and it was an opportunity to see a beautifully landscaped area, off-street parking, and an immaculate facility that potentially our principals and or social worker or counselor at school can say to a parent who's having a problem with mental issues, substance abuse problems, conflict issues, there is help for you locally. You don't need to drive to Metairie or to the North Shore or across the river. Help is here. And if you don't have insurance, it's free. This is an opportunity for the troubled parents of troubled children in our schools to receive help. Another tool in the hand of principals and counselors in dealing with 21st century issues going on in families. So it's truly an important process. Metropolitan is responding, realizing Mr. Warner has talked to some of the folks. He was one of the people that I asked to come forward to talk about what it's like as a principal, what it feels like to deal with parents who are in sometimes very hopeless situations. They've opened the clinic, they're responding, and then additionally, by the end of this year, they're going to open a youth division within. It would already be open. They're still hunting for some of the people that they want. There's going to be an MD on staff who will be able to deal with medication, evaluate what's going on, psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, to be able to help our students. Metropolitan is bringing some support services to Raleigh directly to help some of our students with anger management issues and some of those real complex problems that young people are coping with. So we're really excited that another tier of services will be coming in to assist in the, not just knowing the problems, but helping with the problems. So we're excited about that.
Okay, any questions, comments?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Is this only for residents of St. Bernard Parish?
Mrs. Acevedo, Metropolitan serves Plaquemine, St. Bernard, and Orleans. And the St. Bernard division, I think, is going to target St. Bernard people because there's services available in New Orleans. And
So you go in a parish village?
yeah, yes, ma'am. The other part to this, there could be, for very complex children's situations, there could be the possibility that some of our kids would be directed to the Elysian Fields site because they have a very large ability to serve complex situations for children. But the plan is to bring as much, especially adolescent services, to the community as possible. We talked about a phasing process, so where we're able to phase in the most needed the most needed services for children as well as those kids in greatest need, so that we don't overwhelm the services as they're just beginning. Thank you, guys.
Okay, wait, I'm sorry, Mr. Kassar. We also had Mr. Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Dysart. Mr. Kassar,
Yes, sir.
thank you and your staff for your Herculean efforts with your cultural arts. I mean, you do a fabulous job bringing us forward. And
Thank you.
I
It's
know
a
you're going to be
wonderful
here.
team, an amazing team of wonderful people. I'm their cheerleader. I'm their cheerleader.
You're Hercules, okay?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Also, we're going to see you real soon because this is Christmas, but right around the bend, we start with the Battle of New Orleans.
Start me on that topic.
All the events that coincide with that, and in addition to that, we're adding another event, the Jackson Day race.
Which we're
St. Bernard
excited
will be
about.
hosting the Jackson Day race this year as part of our Battle of New Orleans celebration, which I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's 111 years old, this race. They've been running it for 111 years. But in any event, I know we'll see you real soon to talk about it.
Well, matter of fact, Mr. Highland and I met this morning, actually, about this very thing. One of the issues that's upcoming is, first of all, the park is not planning any youth activities this year. So that's not acceptable. We're not going to do that. So Mr. Highland is reaching out in his vast array of services. Mr. Warner and he and I are planning to do something at Chalmette High School, not to share Mr. Highland's thunder, but what he's planning for the tricentennial is to reveal that Chalmette High School site has been in continuous use of education since its colonial founding. It was, in fact, the plantation that was owned by one of the religious orders. The Ursulines, actually, the Ursulines owned that site, and the food that was grown there took care of the school endeavors throughout the greater New Orleans area. So from its colonial founding, where Chalmette High School exists, has been in continuous use of the service of education of children, which I think is going to be an amazing thing to unroll and to set Chalmette right in the center of this fabulous tradition. And that it was, in fact, part of the battle site. It was also part of the quartering of thousands of British soldiers, and to begin to bring to life that story. It's a story that's been lost for just way too long, and to be able to bring that story back to life and to bring pride into our community, to realize that the Revolutionary War started in 1776 with that whole effort was consummated, and finally we became a nation here, not in Lexington, not in Massachusetts, in Chalmette. This is the place where where America was really born, that has been stolen from us for such a long time, and we need to bring that to life. That will put pride in our community like few things will, I think. So that's all coming. That's
More
all
to
brewing.
come.
More brewing, yes. Thank you, guys. Stay tuned.
Okay. Anyone else on the cultural arts affairs? Mr. Kasor, before you leave,
Yes,
I just ditto to what Mr. Warner said. Thank you so much for your tireless efforts, you and your staff, all the teachers who support all of the groups that perform, and the cultural arts, your daughters, all the teachers who participate with our students so that they have these wonderful opportunities. It's just amazing the opportunities that our students in St. Bernard Parish have, and we appreciate all of your efforts and hard work, and all of the teachers also who participate. And I have one question about the Christmas at the complex. I saw a few of the schools who participated last year not on the schedule. Was there a limited times frame for that too?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Pam Wagoner at the Parish Complex was doing the scheduling. So I've just asked them to keep us in the loop. So they were dealing with schools sort of directly. So I don't know.
Okay, thank you. And then on the last thing, the LMEA.
Yes, ma'am.
Congratulations to Chalmette High School, its band,
Indeed.
and all the
Indeed.
auxiliary groups. Superior is very, very, very difficult. Back in the day, a few years ago, I was in the Andrew Jackson High School band, and we would perform every year. And if you got a Superior, I mean, that was very, as you said, very difficult to get a Superior. And for a public school system, as you said, I mean, it's amazing that, excuse me, that they got Superior, and that each of the auxiliary groups also got Superior. And a few years ago, right after Katrina, if you remember, our Chalmette High School band was only comprised of about 25 to 30 maybe members. And Mr. Rusk has done an excellent job of building that program, the music program, and I think we're over 100 band members at this time.
It's another story.
And then, of course,
Any given week.
okay. It's a moving target. But
Yeah, it's a
he's
moving
done a
target.
tremendous
Yes.
job with the music
Yes, he
program.
does.
And so, the Chalmers are always excellent, and all of our auxiliary groups. So, again, to receive, not to receive, but to earn a Superior at the LMEA is quite a feat. So, congratulations to Chalmette High School again.
Thank you,
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Dysart.
Mr. Gaines.
Just want to mention one more thing. And I'm really pleased to hear about the Battle of New Orleans plans coming to fruition with Chalmette High being the center. But I'd like to mention that we have a founders room at the Cultural Arts Center, and there's some nice acquisitions coming on board pretty soon, and I think we ought to be looking at that as well, because with the historic artifacts, it's just those paintings of Chalmette and the Baron. It's amazing to have in that founders room. I just want to point that out.
If you board members would be interested in a tour at some point, I'd love to give a tour. Give you all the details, for sure.
Okay.
We just had an amazing acquisition. We have a bed that was just gotten, intended for Chalmette's play. that just occurred, the government inspector, only to find that it is an incredibly rare piece. You know, the Antique Roadshow experience, it happened. It happened to us. And we'll share that in the next edition of this. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you again, Mr. Kasor, for all you do. Okay. Next item on the agenda is an education item.
Thank you, Mr. Isart. Item 6 is the Head Start Annual Report and Update. Dr. Raiola, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come before you tonight. You know that Head Start has a number of rules and regulations that we must adhere to, and this is our opportunity to come before you as the governing body to share with you those documents, those things that we must follow. This is our opportunity to share that with you as the governing body. So I'm going to go through a number of handouts that you have there. I'm also going to go over these handouts with our policy council when we have our next meeting in December. No actions required on any of these. This is really for informational purposes, so I'm going to go through these, walk you through these, the various handouts with you. If you look at handout 6A, Head Start mandates that we present to you and the public a report published at least once in each fiscal year that discloses the following information from the most recently concluded fiscal year. So if you look at those sections that we have there, Section A talks about the funds that we received last year. Section B breaks down the spending into the various categories. Section C talks about the total number of families and children that we serve. Section D talks about the most recent review by the Secretary and the financial audit. We're in full compliance, no corrective action is required. We're in year 2 of that 5-year process, and I'll speak a little bit about the upcoming monitoring that we're going to be undergoing in the spring. Section E is our medical and dental report showing the number of children that we service, our number of Head Start children that we service in terms of screenings, and then also with regard to follow-up treatment. Section F highlights our ongoing parent involvement activities, and you all participate in a number of those things. In addition to the things that you're attending at school sites, we also have parent orientations, home visits, conferences with teachers and paraprofessionals. We have an open door policy when it comes to our preschool programs, and we have a number of parent information workshops that we put on. We're also going to be developing a parent, we'll be purchasing and reviewing a parent curriculum that we'll be sharing with our Head Start parents. We had it's our first annual Head Start Health Fair, but actually it was kind of we had since the storm, we hadn't been able to start it, and we started it over again. And what we did was we were able to get a number of all the providers, medical providers, health providers, in the community, and we had that last year, and it was a big hit, so we're going to continue that again this year. And then in Section G, it just addresses our program's efforts to help children transition from preschool to kindergarten. So that's our Head Start annual report, and it'll be published in the newspaper, and take care of that. If you look at handout 6B, now this is our program information report. And in 6B, we're not going to go through every page of this. This is for your information. But it covers the following topics: our enrollment, our staff qualifications, our child and family services, disability services that we provide, and our community partnerships. So this goes into great detail. It has a lot of data about how our Head Start program. Remember, our Head Start program last year was 6 classrooms servicing 112 children. One of the other things, and I just want to remind you that one of the other things that you need to be aware of is that our Head Start program needs to be audited, and of course our audit that we have for Head Start is part of the school district's audit, and I think Mr. Fernandez presented that to you last month, and so again we were part of that audit. So that's the program information report. If you look at handout 6C, I have 2 documents here in 6C. The first one is a summary of last year's results with our Head Start students. And remember, the Head Start students comprise 112 of our approximately 500 preschool students. So here we're looking strictly at our Head Start students. Our overarching goal in Head Start and in preschool is to get our kids ready for kindergarten. It's all about kindergarten readiness, and so that's what we're looking at. What we do we assess our children 3 times during the year. In the beginning of the year, they've completed their fall assessments. Usually it's in that September time frame, September, October time frame. We'll have a second benchmark assessment in January, and then we'll have the final benchmark assessment in April, May time frame. And if you look at it, we use TS Gold, Teaching Strategies Gold, and it's a research-based, valid, reliable assessment tool that we use with our children. And we're looking at about 7 areas of development: social emotional, mathematics, cognitive, language, literacy, physical gross motor, and physical fine motor. And when you look at that, what we have here, this first chart is a look at how the kids performed in the fall assessment in October to how they performed at the end of the year. Now our goal is to have 100% of our kids meet or exceed all the expectations. A little bit more realistically, we shoot for 80%, and we wind up having quite a bit greater than that as you look at the increase. On page 2 of that chart, Teaching Strategies assigns an expected growth target. So they're looking at how the kids scored in the beginning of the year, and they give us what they'd like to see as growth targets. And of course, the percentage of the children meeting or above the growth range is pretty high for what we're doing. So we're pleased with that. The next 2 tables, they separate it out by race and by gender. And then what we do is we use this information to help provide our PD during the course of the year, what areas we really need to focus on. Lately, it's kind of been math. It's always, we always want to, of course, focus on literacy, but our math skills, our kids are coming into us lacking math skills, and so we try to focus on our math interventions as we go through the course of the year. That next page right after that, this shows our fall data. So what I'm doing now is presenting to you this year's group of kids, not last year's group of kids, this year's group of kids with what their entry-level scores were. And so that's what this chart here tends to do. And again, math continues to be a focus area. We're in the ballpark. It's funny how some cohorts are a little bit different. Either some areas we went up a little bit, others we went down a little bit. So we look at these numbers and try and plan our activities and let our teachers know what areas to kind of focus on. And so that's handout 6C. If you look at handout 6D, this is just, as of the end of October, our health report for our kids, the number of kids that we're servicing in Head Start, our dentals and physicals, as well as our vision and hearing checks and the number of referrals. We have about 90 days. This is about the end time for all of these things to be finalized, our vision and hearing, and making sure that our children get their physicals and dentals. And what we really try and focus on, what Nurse Armstrong focuses on, is not just the initial screenings, but also if there are follow-ups are needed, are the parents, are the children going for those follow-up visits? And then we're checking to make sure that everything's taken care of. So that's the health report. Handout 6E, and I give this to you every year. This is just a reminder of the governing body's roles and responsibilities. The board, just the basic, the board has the legal and fiscal responsibility to guide and oversee the program. And it's accomplished, by receiving reports from us, by me coming here before you tonight, by sharing information and handouts with you so that you're aware of what's going on. You'll also recall that Ms. Lemoyne is our sitting member on our policy council. And so she's on that policy council meeting with us every month, and she's your liaison to the policy council. You'll also remember that every month in the board newsletter that you receive a copy of our monthly financial report our monthly enrollment report, and our monthly menu from food services. On page 2 of that document, I just want to recognize our newly elected Policy Council officers. We elected them at the last meeting. Our president is Ms. Jasmine Sellers, our vice president is Ms. Gabrielle Mackles, and our secretary is Ms. Josie Thornton. So congratulations to them, and we really appreciate those parents who are part of our Policy Council for stepping up and coming to our meetings. Handout 6F is a handout. It also has two parts to it. You'll notice St. Bernard Parish Head Start Program Goals 2017 and 18. And then right behind that, I've included St. Bernard Parish Head Start Program Goals 16 and 17. Remember that last year when we came before you, we're on a 5-year plan, a 5-year program. Head Start is now doing their monitoring over the course of a 5-year cycle. And so last year, for the 16-17 year, we had to submit our program goals for the next several years. And so the 16-17 set of goals there are our original goals. And what I've included in the 17-18, it gives us, it lets you know where we are, the updates, how we've approached each of the goals from 16-17, what kind of things have we mastered or completed, what kind of things are we needing to carry forward to this year. And so really what we have is, you'll notice they're going to remain pretty much the same. When we set these goals, we put a lot of time, energy, thought into it, did our self-assessments, and these are the things that we want to focus on over the course of this 5-year period. Goal 1 is our health areas. So again, we want to take care of the physical and dental health topics of our students. We've tried to include more of that into our curriculum, so the kids are also getting it in the classroom. 2 and 3, goals 2 and 3, again, those are academic. They deal with literacy and math. Goal 4, we live in a data-driven world, and so, of course, we want to make sure that we're analyzing and using the data that we have to help our kids. Goal 5 is an ongoing goal, parent participation. We want to increase our parent participation, which is kind of the goal of every school, every district across the country. But it's one of those things that we want to try and increase. And that's why we're reviewing and going to include that parent curriculum into the program. Goal 6 is our, our teachers are observed twice a year for class, using the class observation tool. And so what we want to do is focus on those areas that are weaker, that our teachers tend to not score as highly on, and focus on providing professional development to try and boost those areas. And then goal 7 will increase the use of technology and gathering student data. So we mentioned that, for TS Goal, we're assessing kids in the fall, winter, and spring. We use our technology to help us track that data. The last handout I have there is the Head Start Program Performance Standards Final Rule, a general fact sheet. And this is something that, again, we're not going to go through everything on here, but you'll recall last year I mentioned that we've had our first rewrite of Head Start Performance Standards since 1998. And they've gone into effect. And so this just gives you a general fact sheet on some of the changes. A lot of it is similar. We were pleased as we went through the standards. Many of them are similar. They pride themselves, Head Start prides itself on using research-based practices to come up with their standards for their Head Start programs. And so we also pride ourselves on doing those things that are research-based and appropriate for use in our preschool programs. So those things, we're fortunate that most of them are already used, and we're also doing most of them. So we're pleased that we're already doing many of the things that are mentioned in this handout. So with that, I wanted to mention that we're going to be undergoing the first phase of our federal monitoring this year. We've gotten our notice that sometime in the course of the spring, they'll send us what's called a 60-day letter, and so we'll have a 60-day notice. And so that's kind of, it'll give us, we were obviously already starting to prepare, but It'll give us a little bit of notice of when they're going to be coming. They're going to be looking at our health and safety issues. They're going to be doing class observations in our Head Start classrooms. They're going to be talking, viewing some finance issues with our finance department, and also there may be some interviews with some of you. And of course, we'll keep you posted on those things. So with that, before I close, before I leave you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I want to thank you for your support for our preschool programs over the years. Without that support, it wouldn't be possible for us to have the universal preschool Head Start that we already have. I guess on a sad note, you'll notice probably in the next item on the agenda, personnel news, you're going to see a retiree. And the plan, I think, all along for Ms. Desatel was that she was completing her 40th year. And so her plan was to retire at the end of this year. But due to some health concerns and health issues, she's had to step away before she really wanted to. And so it's a sad day for all of us. She's given 40 years to the children of St. Bernard Parish, and as an early intervention teacher, as a preschool teacher, as an education specialist for our preschool programs, and as our program coordinator. And I know Mr. Kassar mentioned that he's a cheerleader. Well, I'm really the figurehead here. What we do and the programs that we have in preschool are really they're possible because of the efforts of Ms. Siebert in her days with the preschool, Ms. Desatel, our management team, and so it's a sad day for us. We're in the process of, we put out an advertisement, so we're in the process of looking at replacements, but we just want to thank her for all of her efforts in making us what we are today. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Reif, we also like to take this opportunity to thank you for your leadership in our preschool program, Ms. Desatel, and I know we'll talk about this in the next item, but for her service to the program and all of our teachers and paras that work to make this a very successful program. We thank you, and also board members, we will need to actually do an action tonight to receive this item. I believe Mr. England.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lewis. It was an amazing presentation that you did, Doc. I really appreciate that. That was really informative. But at this time, I'd like to make a motion to receive the report from Doc.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay. Ms. Lemoyne, second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Anyone?
With congratulations for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. Go ahead.
When is the monitoring on it? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
We're going to get it. We don't know the exact dates, but we're going to get a 60-day letter. So once that 60-day letter comes, it'll give us the exact week that they're going to be here. So we're thinking sometime traditionally they come in a March, April time frame. So that's kind of what we're expecting. So we haven't gotten the 60-day letter yet, so I'm thinking it'll be after the holidays. So.
One more question. Do we, is it too young to introduce like learning technology tools for 4-year-olds? Do they have them working?
We have
them on computers.
Again, they have iPads and computers. Yeah. Now again, we're really pushing. We really want to get them to talk and to communicate and to play with others, because a lot of times a lot of our kids are coming with that's all they're doing is being on an iPad all the time. So we want to encourage their vocabulary. So there is this interaction, but yeah, we have technology.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? So we have a motion and second to receive this item. Please vote, cast your vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Dysart.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Next item on the agenda are personnel changes for November 2017. And good evening, Mr. Granberry.
Good evening.
Always good to see you.
And you will see Ms. Desatel's name listed there.
As
As
Dr. Raviota mentioned, Ms. Desatel's retirement is on our personnel changes, and it's, like I said, it's a sad day. Ms. Desitel has been a wonderful teacher and has contributed so much to our preschool Head Start program. And we want to thank her for her many years of service, and we want to wish her the best and a happy retirement. And again, our sincerest thanks to Miss Elizabeth Desitel. Thank you very much for all of your service. Ms. Voce?
I also would like to echo that. Ms. Desitel has been outstanding the last 40 years as an early intervention teacher. Is when I first met her, when I moved to the central office and went out and observed in some of the schools. And early education was not my bailiwick, but I think she dealt with few older children older elementary children at that time. And she's probably been, I know, absolutely one of the best we have ever had in the special needs, working with special needs children and then moving into our preschool. And in this particular position, when Ms. Siebert came in to work on our federal programs, and the program didn't miss a beat because Ms. Desitel was always one of the people who provided that backbone in the program. So she is going to be sorely missed, and we wish her well in her retirement and nothing but good things because of the tremendous, I guess, what she has provided for the children of St. Bernard Parish and the sacrifices she has made over the years for our children. So we wish her very well in her retirement.
Thank you, Ms. Voce.
Yeah, Mr. Tyson.
Okay, Mr. England?
Mr. Franco, Justin Templer, he graduated from Chalmette, didn't he? Yeah.
Sure did.
Former students.
He'll finish his student teaching December 1st, Friday, December 1st, and he'll start Monday, December 4th, teaching. When they're there, we grab them. Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions or other comments on personnel changes at this time? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Granberry. We appreciate all that you do, and your job continues to be very, very active, and thank you very much for keeping us always fully staffed. We appreciate your hard work. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the finance item. Ms. Lamorne.
Thank you, Ms. Dysart. Agenda item number 8 is the bid tabulation for bids received for spices and seasonings, Class 2, cereal, dried beans and crackers, Class 3, frozen foods, Class 5, meat and meat products, Class 6, poultry and eggs, Class 7, seafood products, Class 8, and canned goods, Class 9, for the period of January 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2018. And we have Ms. Bloom with us this
Good
evening.
evening. These are the bid tabulations for a 6-month food bid that we just opened. And so I'm asking permission. We tabulated all the bids. We had 4 vendors, and of the 4 vendors, we took the lowest price in respect, with respect of the conditions and the specifications in the bid.
I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, we've got a motion by Dr. Lewis and seconded by Mr. Warner. Are there any questions or comments for Ms. Bloom?
Ms. Bloom, no exceptions on any of the bids?
No exceptions?
Exceptions, no, all of them were the lowest bid?
Oh, absolutely, with
Okay.
respect to the conditions and specifications.
Okay.
As long as they met those 2 conditions, then of course we take the lowest bid.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Bloom? All right, please cast your vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bloom. Agenda item number 9 is the revised 2017-2018 general fund and special revenue budgets. And we have Mr. Fernandez with us this evening.
Thank you. In your folders, you have our revised 2017-2018 budgets for the general fund and special revenue funds. This is basically a technical revision. As you know, every year after we close out our books, have our audit, and get our final numbers in. we come in and we revise the budget to kind of tighten it up a little. We add in our year-end encumbrances into our budget so that those monies can be expended in the current year. We add in any fund balances, as well as we made an adjustment or we refined the salaries. As you know, the original budget was completed in May of this year. So now there have been a lot of changes, people leaving, new people being hired. So we refined the salary portion of the budget as well to the actual salaries. So we're just presenting that to you for your information. There are 4 exhibits. The first is a summary of the totals of the budget. It shows what we expect total revenues, total expenditures, and ending fund balance to be at year end. Exhibits 2 and 3 are the detail on revenues and expenditures, where you'll see the refinements that we have made. And exhibit number 4 is our special revenue funds budget, which we've adjusted to our actual final allocations for the year for those grants that we're adopting budgets for. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Fernandez? Dr. Kraft?
Yes, Mr. Fernandez, have you had the opportunity to look as far as the income to provide the expenses of the school district, the percent we get from the federal, the state, and the local? Do you have those percentages?
I don't have exact percentages for you. Usually it runs about 50 to 60% state, 40% local, and 10% federal, looking at all funds.
Looking at all funds, okay. So going back over the years, has the local expenditures continued to increase in order to cover the budget?
Usually we anticipate a slight growth in local expenditures. As you see in this revised budget, I increased the estimate for sales taxes because, as you recall, we were conservative in our original estimate because there was some volatility last year, but that has kind of settled down a little, so we felt confident in increasing that estimate this year. Property taxes, except for a couple of years ago where we had an aberration where our assessment went down, usually grow a bit every year as property values increase. So our local revenues traditionally have increases every year that we can take advantage of.
Okay.
Not
So,
great increases, but you know.
So with all the school buildings being paid off, what we have now is for the general operations, 41 mills, is that correct?
We have total millage of 41.22 mills, yes, sir.
How much?
41.22 mills is our
Okay,
current
yeah.
total levy.
Round figures, 41 mills.
Yes, sir.
And of course, we have on the ballot 10 mill propositions there that would continue that 41. If without that 41, we'd be cut down to 31, and I don't think anyone could expect to take a 25%.
Well, actually,
decrease.
on the ballot is 31 mills.
31 mills.
We would be cut to 10 mills. Yes.
31 mills?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
About
So
we
10
we
mills.
traditionally
So
collect.
that'd be 75%. So,
Yes, sir.
yeah, that would be unrealistic to be able to expect to operate with that kind of decrease. But again, I had a couple other things in here I wanted to ask about. In personnel, with the salaries there, I have no problem with sometimes when it's one thing, I can figure that. But if it's a group of people, could we possibly put the number of people that those salaries are, like kindergarten teachers, when those separate, we could
Yes, sir.
we could have those.
Yes,
in
we can give you the
parentheses,
staff and numbers, of course.
the numbers. That I think that would be helpful there, and I think you've got it set up well in the various categories. This way you could give the numbers for that. One question I had on page 4, dealing with adult education. I see a $200. How's adult education funded?
Yes, adult education is funded through state and federal grants, and those are reflected in the special revenue funds budget, which is on the Exhibit 4. You'll see there's a account for adult education. In the general fund, the $200 basically covers adult education's portion of our workers' compensation expense.
Okay.
That's the expense that was
So the other adult ed, the teachers are covered
in a special revenue fund for that purpose. Yes,
okay,
sir.
in another deal. Okay, so this, how many employees they have? They have the director of the program and
They have a program director who's also the teacher. They have an aide who works with the program, and they have a couple of part-time people that assist.
yeah, so they really almost run it on a bare bones deal with part-timers. Okay.
Yes, sir. We've been experiencing some state cuts in those funds.
Going to page 8. Yeah, and of course this is an issue with us now. We are working with the electric power company. I see we're about $3.3 million budgeted to pay for our electricity.
Electricity, yes, sir.
That's right, yeah.
That's a great expense.
That's sort of hefty. That's more than water and the gas combined. Okay, so another question. Repair and upkeep of equipment. We went from 80,000 to 90, about 92,000. What does that cover?
Repair and upkeep of equipment is through our maintenance department. It's for repairs to our equipment that they use.
Is this with air conditioning and?
Well, that would be covered in a separate area. It's
separate,
normally like
that's a separate contract.
You know, the machines that custodians use, buffers, things like that, things in the warehouse, forklifts, things. Those need to be repaired occasionally. That's usually for that.
Would that also involve replacement if you had a buffer that burned up?
Yes, sir.
Or is this just repairs?
This also could be used for replacement, yes.
Okay, so you have some replacement in there, so we might say replacement, repair, and upkeep. Okay. What contracted services maintenance at $10,000? What does that cover?
I'm sorry? Contracted services maintenance, that's just if the maintenance department needed any contracted services. It's just an estimated
Something
allocation if they need to call in a professional to come in and
that they could not handle themselves.
Yeah, correct. If it's outside of our expertise and we need somebody to come in, that's
Yeah.
just an allocation available to them.
For example, they wouldn't be prepared if they needed someone to fix a hole in the pool there. That would be under contracted.
Right. If we didn't have the expertise or to address
handle
that item ourselves, we might call in a professional to come give us advice.
All right, nothing wrong with that. The non-transport vehicle maintenance.
Repairs.
That's 35.
Yes, sir.
A little over 35,000. How many vehicles do we have in our fleet other than the school buses?
We have several maintenance vehicles. I would say about 10 trucks, vans that are used in the maintenance department operations. We have a separate allocation under their expenditures to cover the maintenance for their
For instance,
vehicles.
if we needed to replace one of the vehicles in maintenance, is that another category, or would that be coming under this?
We would budget that at the time. We look at our inventory every year and try to project our needs. And if during the coming year we had a need for additional vehicles, we would add that into the budget and let you know that this budget includes the purchase of a couple of trucks or the like. In this budget, we're not anticipating any immediate needs for vehicle purchases.
Okay, in the items right above that, we have upkeep of the grounds, 60,000, and contracted service for grass cutting, 196,350. What's the difference? Is that the same?
Contracted services grass cutting is the grass cutting contract that the board has approved.
Yeah.
Who
And
goes
that
out
was
and
100
maintains all of our lawns. Upkeep of grounds would be things like fencing or things that we would take care of ourselves. Huh?
Yeah,
Mulch for playgrounds, things that aren't covered under our grass cutting contract. We do have other landscaping obligations that we have that aren't covered under
Do
the
we
grass
have
cutting
a
contract.
contract with someone to do that, or do we do it in-house with other people?
We usually do it in-house. We'll purchase the mulch,
yeah,
and then our people will go out and spread it and things like that.
Yeah, I've seen some of that going on, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Now, the board approved a $188,000 bid for the grass cutting a year or so ago. It's $196,350.
Yes,
That's
sir.
an increase from $188,000.
We had to add the new school onto
That
it.
was for Merrill, in other words.
Yes, sir.
And that was done pro rata based on
Yes, sir. It
the
was pro
square
rata
feet
based.
that you had there and
Yes,
the
sir.
amount of needs as compared with the other schools, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, that makes sense. All right. You're doing a great job there. You had a good math teacher there, David.
I owe it all to you, Dr. Graham.
He's talking about himself, huh?
Okay, do we have any
You got
other?
a shot at him.
Any other questions for Mr. Fernandez? Okay. We'll need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Dr. Lewis, seconded by Mr. Warner. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, please cast your vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Agenda item number 10 is the discussion of the new state accountability plan under ESSA.
Okay. This is a very massive undertaking, and I'm just going to hit a few highlights. I could talk for 2 hours on this, but I'm going to give you the short version. And if anyone wishes to delve more deeply into it, I'll be happy, to meet and go over different parts of it with you individually. As everyone knows, the ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, which was passed by Congress, mandated that all states develop a plan which addresses those particular tenets. And within the overreaching ESSA plan, the accountability formula is really the main portion of it that will be affecting us directly. And what I would like to do is just kind of touch on the different components, and if anybody has any more in-depth questions, I'll be happy to answer them now or later, whichever you choose. The major changes, and I want everybody to understand as we go through this, when we begin to talk about school performance scores and district performance scores, we've been operating under a system for several years, which it seems like every year it was tweaked and changed a little bit. But this is going to be a major change. The standards, the Louisiana standards, state standards, are not changing. So the standards in math and science and English and social studies will remain the same. What the change is going to be, and I think it's a misnomer out there, is when people are saying that we are raising the standards within this plan. We're not raising standards. The standards are the same. What is happening is the level at which students are showing that they have mastered these changes is being awarded fewer points within the system. So if a child would have the exact same performance next year as they have this year, they will devalue that effort. So if the child would have earned, and I'll just say 100 points on the scale, he might, for the same effort, only earn 80 in the coming year. So what will happen, that is going to mean that there is going to be statewide a decrease in all of the school performance scores, and in a roll-up area, the district performance scores for the performance piece. And it doesn't mean the children are not improving or maintaining at their grade level. It just means that the effort that they have shown, the performance that they have shown, they are being devalued for that year. We have, I think, in the state of Louisiana, talked a great deal about if a student scored basic, that meant he was on grade level. That's what we've been saying the last 10 years. If you score at a basic level, you're on grade level. What's happening now with the new ESSA plan, that's no longer going to be the case. The case, it will say now, to be at the place we wish you to be in terms of your achievement level, you have to score mastery. So mastery is the new basic, as they say. So if you score on a 5-level scoring, with advanced being the highest, then mastery, basic is 3rd, approaching basic is 4th, and unsatisfactory is 5th, in order for students to reach what they're calling the new standard is, they have to score at mastery, at level 2 of that 5-part scoring process, which is going to make it more difficult for students to reach and attain that level. So the major changes, there will be an adjustment in the scoring system to ensure that to reach an A or a B, it's going to be more difficult, and that's going to be done by awarding fewer points for the same level of student achievement. And we're going to look at that briefly as I run through these pages. Secondly, that there is going to be a growth component within the formula now that will be worth 25% of the formula at the elementary and middle school level. But that growth performance, as we're going to see, is not an individual growth level. It will be growth in relation to a peer group. And when you look at a growth model in that fashion, there are going to be winners and losers. So for example, if you score at what your peer group scores, then you've reached the average. By forcing it into a growth in relation to your peers, you're going to have your half of the kids above average, but half below average, which are going to get very few points in that matrix. Whereas a pure growth model would be to say every child then, if they score or if they grow the equivalent of one, I guess, grade level year to year, then every child could potentially reach that. A relative growth model ensures that you're going to have half your kids reaching or exceeding it and the other half not reaching the average. And that's what gives me a little pause with that in terms of the growth model. It also can be called the value-added model because it is the same type of model when we evaluate teachers, or the state evaluates teachers. And then the third component of the accountability formula that's going to be a change is something called an interest and opportunity section. The federal government has mandated that every accountability plan must have a non-academic or a non-assessment piece. And the way Louisiana has responded to that is to put in 5% of a school performance score that will be based upon interest and opportunities. But nobody knows yet what that will be. So they are still developing that as we speak, and that will not be incorporated until the 2019-20 school year to put that 5% in. In the meantime, that 5% is going into the performance piece, the actual score that the kid makes or the student makes. So those are going to be your major 3 changes. All right, if you look at the bottom part of that first page, beginning this year for elementary schools, and it's a little pie chart, 75% of the score will be assessment based on how they do on the test, and 25% will be on the growth. At the middle school level, or if you have a K-8 school or a true middle school, 70% will be on the assessment score, 25% on growth, and a little 5% is something that we'll look at briefly that's called the Dropout Credit Accumulation Index, which applies to middle schools, and that basically says how well did that child do in the 9th grade? And that falls back then on how the middle school prepared them to achieve credit in the 9th grade. And then the high school is a much more complex formula where 25% is based on end-of-course tests split up in 12.5% on how they score and 12.5% on how they grow. Another 25% on the ACT work key score, another 25% on what they call strength of diploma, and the last 25% on the cohort grad rate. So there's many, many, many more factors that go into the evaluation of a high school. So if you flip over in the year 2019-2020, see that little red piece, that 5% interest and opportunities piece? You see how that fits into each of the levels, how they're decreasing the assessment piece by 5% to put that in. And at the high school, they're putting it in and decreasing the cohort grad rate. All right, K to 8, for purposes of accountability. If you have an elementary or middle school, what we put in here are the current scoring mechanism in 2016-17, and what that performance piece will be beginning this year and beyond. If a child scores advanced, he gets 150 points in the model. Now remember, 100 points is an A. What you're shooting for to be an A school is that every child scores 100 points. So if you get 150, you're a little bit above, but anything below 100 is below. All right, mastery. Currently, a child in the current performance, basic was what we used to tell everybody was on grade level. It gave you 100 points. If you did mastery, you got 125, advanced 150. But if you scored in the lower two, approaching basic or unsat, it was 0. And we know that, say a child, for every 0 that you get, if your goal is 100, think how many 150s you need. You need 2 advanced scores of 150 to counteract 1 approaching basic at 0. Because you'd add a 150 and a 150 gives you 300. The third child gives you a 0. 3 and the 300 is 100. So for every child who scores either approaching basic or unsat, you need 2 advanceds. And getting an advance is difficult to get on that scale. Dr. Kraft?
Yes. Am I correct? It's 2 categories there, an approaching basic and an unsatisfactory, right? So
Right.
it's 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 5 categories?
Correct.
So now, anytime you have 5, now we could have 2 zeros there. Now, if someone scored a 59, what would they get? A 0, right?
You mean on the old type of grading scale?
Yeah, on a test. So
Yes,
what
on a
would
test like we're used to when we were in school. From 0 to 100, a 59 would be an F, a
Yeah,
0.
but they
Correct.
count that F, any F.
As
no
a
matter-
0.
As a 0, it's not gonna be averaged in.
Correct.
Now, we're still averaging points, I believe, 150, the 80, and the 100 there.
Mhm.
So it is impossible mathematically to slap 2 zeros in there and expect any school system to flourish. It's impossible.
Well, if you're a selective admission school or a school in an affluent area, you could.
Yeah.
You know, but if you're a comprehensive
Yeah.
school, there are many
If you-
children who will struggle,
For example,
who will
we were
score in the
talking-
lower 2
We were talking
bands.
about the AACT. Now,
Mhm.
students that are not planning on going on to college per se, academic-wise,
Mhm.
what is their motivation? Because we're required to give it to every student, right?
Yes.
Especially ed students that are not planning on going to college.
Mhm.
Their motivation is they're not going to do that well on the ACT because their plans are otherwise. So again, for putting everything in the mix, it's well, if I was going to design something for failure, this is what I would design.
Well, it
I
will-
would design it.
the-
And they put a lot of time in designing something for failure for public schools and for those people that work with individuals every day across the spectrum. And of course, our job in public education, we take the students that come to our door, and our job is to make them as functional as possible as they leave school and go into the world of work or going into academia. So again, it's just not fair when you find something of this magnitude and that's designed by supposedly professional people to try to put this over on people. It's really what I consider a scam as far as evaluation is concerned. And of course, somewhere along the line, we've got to take educational back from those people outside the state that wants to take over public education. And they want to take taxpayers' dollar, put it in the form of a voucher, and ship it to any storefront private school that wants to exist. And that's not in the best interest of the students. That's all I've got to say about that right now. Thank you very much.
Okay. If you look at this chart, what you're going to see, if a student now scores mastery this year, instead of the 125, he's only going to earn 100 points. The basic will drop to 80, and then the approaching and unsat will remain at 0. So those are massive point drops at the mastery and the basic level, dropping 25 points for every mastery, child scoring mastery, and 20 points for every child scoring basic. All right, if you look, and really our elementary schools, now 75% of their score will be based on this, and then 25 will be a growth piece that we'll kind of look at in a minute. All right, the middle schools, or K to 8 school, that DCAI says the credit accumulation index, it took a ninth grader and said, well, how many credits did you earn in ninth grade? And the 2016-17, the current year, if the child, let's find where the 100 is, if he earned 5 credits, he got 100 points. And then you see the differences in point value up and down. Next year, for that same 5 credits, instead of 100, he drops to 50 points. So in order to earn 100 points in that index, he has to move up to the 6, which was formerly 150 points. So what you're seeing is the same level of achievement, earning fewer points. So your elementary is going to be the assessment, the 75%. This for middle schools will be 5% added to the assessment. So you can see how those score values are coming down for next year for that same level of performance. That if you, did you have a question, Mr. Gaines?
A clarification. So 6 points basically is the ninth grader passes all his classes, right?
Well, it depends. We're lucky in that we're in a block, 4x4 block. So we usually score very well with this because every ninth grader has the potential in our system to earn 8 credits. Many schools throughout the state are on a 6-hour day, six courses, and some are on 7. So our 4x4 block, we usually do very well on this particular indicator because the student has the opportunity to earn 8. And we have that ninth grade academy, they work very, very closely with the students to make sure that they are earning the full 8 credits. So
that would bring us up to that 7 or more category. So
yes, which would give us the 150. So that's helping tremendously for us. So now we do have students that obviously do not earn all of their credits, and they would drop down in these particular point values.
Thank you for clarification.
All right, the high school, the EOC achievement and growth, the high school will go to 5 levels. They will be the same point values as a 3 to 8. So I'm not going to go through and explain. It's the same type of situation. The top 2, advanced to mastery, will give you 100, 50, and 100, then 80 for the basic, and 0 for the bottom 2 for the EOC. The ACT and work keys, and I mean, look, I know these numbers are going to glare over. What I want you to come away with from this on a just initial overview of how much fewer points, how many fewer points are being earned for the same level. So for example, right now, if a student on the ACT earns a composite of 18 out of the 36, that score would be 100. Now, anything below that is a 0. You know, there's no graduation really kind of down below the 0. And then you can see each number as it goes up. We didn't put every individual number like 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Each one goes up in the current model 2.8 points to reach the high. The only way a student in the state can earn the equivalent of an advanced 150 points if he scores a perfect 36 on the ACT. How many kids in the state score a perfect 36? I mean, even our national merit finalists are not scoring a perfect 36, yet they're among the top scoring kids in the entire country. So it doesn't get you the whole 150 points. Well, this year, how many in the whole country score perfect 36?
How many in the state?
I don't know, but if it's any in the metro area, you see them in the newspaper. Right. So that's how rare an occurrence it is. Rare. Because if a child does a perfect 36 composite, now not a 36 in a sub-score, but a 36 composite, you wind up seeing that article in the paper. Very, very few ever achieve that perfect 36. But this coming year, in order to earn the 100 points, the child has to have a composite of a 21, which is even above what you need for tops in the state. And you see how the point values are lessened. So this usually is the lowest indicator of the 4 in the high schools. The ACT Work Keys Index is usually, when you look at the 4 high school indicators, usually the lowest excuse me, the lowest one you have because of the way they're grading it. All right, if you go to the grad rate, now, I don't expect anybody to sit there and look at these formulas for the grad rate. You can, you know, these things are getting as complex as the MFP to understand these things for the person, the lay person. All you need to know in the current year, 2016-17 year, if you had a 75% graduation rate, you scored the 100 points. Anything above that, you got a few more. Anything below, you got less. Well, now, this coming year, it's got to be 90%. And the cohort grad rate, in order to get the 100 points. The cohort grad rate is, what that means is every entering 9th grader that you have in your school, as soon as they step foot in your school as a 9th grader, they become part of the cohort. And they have to graduate with a regular diploma in 4 years in order to be positive in the cohort grad rate. If they move to another school in the state, then they go on that school's cohort. So if we get a kid who transfers in his 2nd year in school, say he went to some other school for a 9th grader and bombed out and didn't get any credits, comes to us as a 10th grade, but really repeating, he is in the 2nd year cohort. He's like has to join our 10th grade cohort. So then you have to make up everything for him that he didn't get the 1st year and get him up to grade level or get him out in 4 years.
Thank goodness.
So wherever he enters schools in the state of Louisiana and he steps foot in a 9th grade classroom, he immediately joins that 4-year cohort. And then wherever he travels, he's still in it because the student information system statewide can track him. Now if he leaves the state or goes to a private school and all, then he's called a legitimate leaver. He's out of your cohort. But if he drops out or they can't find him, or then he's yours forever. So a dropout gives you an immediate 0 in this. If he just came to your school one day, as a 9th, 10th, or 11th grader, just one day, and then he dropped out and didn't go anywhere else, they can't find him, then you have a 0 for this indicator. So now the national graduation rate, 75% was a little generous. I do believe it needed to be increased a little, to make that mark. But going to a 90, that's in excess, well in excess of the national rate, which is in the 80s. So, now Shelmet Highs is over a 90, but Raleigh, of course, is where you have a lot of that. So together, because our high school cohort graduation rate is an 80, I think it's an 86 right now, when you put Raleigh and Shelmet High together, for the whole district, which is good, which is really good. But it's not going to meet this 90% mark for the district unless we continue. Here. The fourth component, which I am not going to even try to explain, that's 25% of the score, is called the Strength of Diploma Index. And that tells you what kind of a diploma did the kid get, did the student get. Did he take AP courses and pass them at a certain level? Was he in dual enrollment? If he went through Jump Start, does he have a basic credential, an advanced credential? I mean, when you see that little indicator up here where it says 110 to 160, the types of things that are in there, without getting into detail, you need those things to bring up any child that didn't make it out in 4 years or just has a GED, which is a high set, or dropped out when you average all of those in. I do want to say our Jump Start program with the basic and the advanced credentialing, we scored second in the state on the basic and advanced credentialing through Jump Start. Now, that's a real positive, but the negative is, for the Jump Start, which are those career pathways, most of those students are not taking the courses that prepare you to do well on the ACT. So while they're taking more of the technical courses, unless they're at, say, they can go into a pathway that's maybe an engineering pathway and want to be going into a 4-year college, well, they'll score well. But those who are going into a construction or the different trades and such, and are taking the applied courses that they need, are not taking the more academic courses that they need to score well in the ACT. So we're seeing for them a decrease in their ACT scores, an increase in the credentialing for this factor, but a decrease in their ACT score. So it's a double-edged sword. You do really well in one area, which can negatively impact the other area. The progress points, which is the growth. Now, I am not going to try to go into, if you want a tutorial on the 25% piece on growth, it'll take me a while to explain. I don't want to bore everyone out here, but just suffice it to say, what the child has, he has to grow to mastery. So, for example, I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Mastery, all of these tests are scored on scaled scores, they call them. 750, a scaled score on each of the 4 major core areas, math, EL, science, and social studies, gets you to a mastery level. Now, the 750 doesn't really mean much to you other than that it's a score you have to reach to be considered mastery. So what they do is a 3rd grader, and you have to reach mastery supposedly by 8th grade. That's your goal on this growth index. So suppose a 3rd grader scores a 700 scaled score. So now he goes into 4th grade. To get to mastery, he has to grow 50 points, right? The difference between 700 and 750. How many years does he need, or does it take him to go to the 8th grade? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5 years. So you divide 5 into the 50-point differential he gets. That means 10 points a year. So his goal in this growth model is to grow 10 points to the 4th grade when he gets his 4th grade test. So you're looking for him to score 710. If he scores at 710, he grew the 10 points, then he gets the highest growth score, which is 150. If he doesn't score those 10 points, he gets thrown into the relative model that says, okay, we're going to put a fictitious group of kids statewide together who are just like you. That these are the scores they had before you, and they have the same kind of characteristics if they're a special needs student or they have been absent a lot of times, all the little factors that go into finding kids in your, what they call your peer group. And after the test is done, they're going to say, okay, what was the average score of that peer group statewide? Okay? Suppose the average score of the peer group statewide, and I'm just going to make up a number. Suppose it was 705. All right? Well, say you scored 708. They give you a little +3 sitting over here on the side. Suppose another member of that peer group scored a 702. Well, that's 3 points below the 705. It gives you a -3. So every kid in the state, in the entire state, has this expected score. That's the average of their peer group. So they run this computer model, and every kid in the state then gets a +3, a -2, a 0, a +8, whatever. And they line them up, top to bottom. And they say, okay, see this little next page here? If you scored in the top 20% with the little pluses and minuses, like, you know, from the 80th to the 99th percentile, top 20%, that means you scored the best in your peer group, you're going to get 150 points. If you scored in the next 20%, 60 to 79, then you're going to get 115 points. The next 20%, the next 20%, the next 20%, and it goes down the line. So it's all relative to how your peers scored. And I'm not going to get into that little mastery part, that's an anomaly. But the point being is, they then tally all of those little growth scores in your school and come out with your score, your index, and that's 25% of your school performance score. So for an elementary or a middle school, remember 75% for the elementary is going to be how they scored on the test, whether it's advanced mastery or whatever, and they got those points. Then the other 25% of their score is how do they line up relative to growth with all these other kids in the state. So you don't really know until after they do that comparison what your growth score is going to be. It's super complicated, I can tell you. You know, so you don't even know what the kid is shooting for till after the test is taken, and they see what the average is for everybody in his peer group.
It's a given. It's a given. It's going to be a given that 50% of the state is going to be below.
Mm-hmm. That's what it means relative growth. It's, your growth is relative to what everybody else in your peer group scored. So now, remember that first piece where we said growth to mastery? Okay, suppose now you're in 6th grade, for example. And remember, 750 is still the goal by 8th. But you're kind of a struggling student or whatever, a lower performing kid on assessments, and say you scored 700 in the 6th grade. Well, you have 2 more years to get to 750, right? To be mastery by the 8th grade. So you still got to grow 50 points from 6th grade to 8th grade. So for you to get the maximum value for your school, you got to grow 25 points, half of it, from 6th to 7th grade. So the older the child gets within that cycle, if he's a struggling student or a child with a disability or whatever, it's harder and harder. You can't make that growth to mastery because there will be some children, as we all know, that will not achieve mastery. They will always be a struggling student academically for whatever reasons there are, the way God made all of us. Because not every child is going to reach that mastery level by the 8th grade. For many different factors, some ability, some environment, or whatever the reasons are. But that's how this 3 to 8th grade thing is going to be. When we put in
everybody in the state, everybody went around and said, okay, if we made the same scores this year, what would the new one come out to be? You're going to see a drop of anywhere from, we saw 12 to 17 points per school. So everyone is trying to educate the public to say, expect school performance scores to go down, not because the kids did any worse. They will have reached those same levels. It's just the levels have less value in the formula. Okay. Now, I realize it's a lot of stuff in here, but the takeaway is for the same performance, the score will be lower. Even for a little increased performance, the score will be lower based on this.
Okay, clarification.
Yes.
I'm going back to the education as in statistics. I thought this was going to be a bell curve, but it's not a bell curve. Because, I mean, if you're looking at the 40 to 59...
Well, the growth might be a little bit, but I realize what you're saying, the tip of the curve, right.
So it's not really a real bell curve at all.
No, well, and when you construct growth models, if you look at growth models across the country, they're all a little different. It's like, be careful what you ask for. Carl, put your mic on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Be careful what you ask for, because a growth model can seem great in concept, because the concept is we want to measure growth of children. But my thing is, in its purest form, I want to measure growth against myself. How am I growing according to the way I should be growing? Not according to how much you grow, and you grow, and you grow, because we are all... But this is what makes it difficult. Now, that's the formula itself. This last page is another part of the ESSA plan that we will all be dealing with statewide this coming, next year at this time. There's a part in ESSA that talks about, and there's a typo there on persistent, but so.
It's okay.
No, this is not from the state. We put this together. Miss Lumetta and I sat there and put this together. But our computers were down today, so this was last minute. So the quality control measures we didn't kick into effect. So, we have a little typo here. So persistently struggling schools. All right. The content is from the state. We just reformatted it and put it in. School systems are required per ESSA to submit a plan, see persistently is spelled right in this next one, struggling schools. Now, the takeaway I want you to get from this, what ESSA mandates nationwide is an emphasis on subgroups, because they're looking for what they consider maybe underserved populations, historically underserved populations. It could be a minority population. It could be students with special needs. It can be English language learners. You can even have subgroups now. They're putting in homeless. If you have enough children to make that in your school, there's going to be a new one called military-affiliated students, if you have enough of them in your school to form a subgroup. And they are mandating that you not only have a school performance score for all of your children, but that you have a school performance score for every individual subgroup, as if that subgroup was its own school within your school. If you have at least 10 kids in that subgroup, that score, based on this accountability formula, is calculated just for those 10 kids.
10 kids is the subgroup. Okay.
10 kids is the minimum subgroup. So if you have 10 or more, it forms a subgroup. If you have only in your school maybe, I don't know, say 8 special needs kids, well then you don't have a special needs subgroup. Who test? Then you don't have a special needs subgroup. So for your school to have a subgroup, you must have at least 10 students who would be in that subgroup. So on the report card for next year, you're going to see a school performance score for the whole school. Then you're going to see a performance score just based on performance, you know, that 75%, like if it was independent. Then you're going to see a letter grade just for growth. Then you're going to see a school performance score for every subgroup in your school. So here's the school A, B, C, D, or F for the students with disabilities, A, B, C, D, or F for African Americans if that's one of your subgroups, A, B, C, D, or F for Hispanics if you have enough to make that, English language learners, homeless, so you can have all these different subgroup scores, economically disadvantaged, if you, and you know, all of our schools have these. So they're going to be an independent school performance score for it. Now, if your school has a, how do I put this? You can read through this. If the whole school is going to be an F school, they're going to be, you get a label of comprehensive intervention needed. Okay? And that would be like an alternative school of ours, like Raleigh, for example. And we're pushing to try to get a different model for alternative schools, and we're kind of getting closer to that. But for a traditional school, which we don't have any that would have a, you know, an F school performance score. There are other labels of urgent intervention needed and required. I want you to skip to that little bottom piece, urgent intervention schools. Urgent intervention needed if the performance of one or more subgroups is equivalent to a D or an F in any given year.
Oh my God.
Okay? You will have a label saying on your school, urgent intervention needed.
One subgroup.
Over 2/3 of the schools in the state of Louisiana right now have an F in the subgroup of students with disabilities. If this label were handed out to schools now, the vast majority of schools in the state of Louisiana would have the label of urgent intervention needed. The next step, and what that does, it says to a school, alert, 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 you're in trouble, you better do something about that subgroup. If the performance of one or more subgroups is an F for 2 consecutive years, you go into urgent intervention required, which is the next step. And that is going to be very difficult, especially for the subgroup of students with disabilities. That's where it's going to hit most schools that get into this. The sanctions that come out of this, you have to then build a plan, which is kind of like the top part of that, building your plan. You're going to have to submit what we used to call corrective action plans, but these are school redesign plans, or a plan of how you're going to address it, what resources you're going to put into it, and how you're going to get the score of that subgroup up. And the only way you can get out of urgent intervention needed or required is if for 2 years you get them above that F level. Okay? And if you don't get it for 3 consecutive years, if it stays that for 3 years, you get bumped up into that middle area. You see where we had comprehensive intervention schools, and the last little bullet under comprehensive intervention says if you are an urgent intervention required for 3 years for the same subgroup, you are then, your whole school becomes in need of comprehensive intervention. The second way you can get into it, if you see urgent intervention required, and this is a response to some national concerns about the numbers of students and what they consider the excessive numbers of students who are suspended, out-of-school suspensions. So if an elementary or middle school has a suspension rate, out-of-school suspension rate, greater than 5.2%, they get the label for 3 consecutive years, you get the label of urgent intervention required. And the high school is 20.2%.
This is going to be a problem for us, guys, at the middle school. It's not a problem at the elementary right now. It's not a problem at the high school. We're well under caps on that. Our middle schools, use that particular form of discipline as, without a school suspension. So we're developing a plan now internally where we're going to have to do more in-school suspensions or other forms of discipline in terms of not suspending children and sending them home for a day. Because the minute you send a child home for one day for any reason whatsoever, then he counts as one of the kids that has an out-of-school suspension. If more than 5.2% of your student body in any given year receives that, then these sanctions can kick in. So that is an area we're going to have to address in this particular model.
Ms. Voce, clarification, in middle school, how many suspensions does it take before they get into Raleigh?
Usually 10 or 11. No, technically, it's supposed to be on the 4th suspension, but nobody ever, or an egregious act, something that would be considered very serious.
So
Okay,
maybe
but schools tend to hold on and do some alternate things instead of suspension, whether they in or out. When they are working with a child, it might be a Saturday detention, or it might be more conference with the parents, or some alternate means. The middle schools are not sending excessive numbers. We've been trying to monitor that to where the most challenging, behaviorally challenging students are sent to Raleigh, unless it is a singular act of something that we consider more serious. So this part of it, what the problem that we're having and that we are complaining about with our state superintendent is not to make this retroactive. Whereas when he's taking 3 years of data or 2 years of data, he wants to backtrack on the last 3 years instead of this year going forward. So those are the discussions we're having with him, and we'll see how that develops as this year progresses. So I realize, this is a lot. You probably have lots of questions or not a total understanding. But this is an overview of what we're seeing the changes are. I do want to make sure that everyone is prepared that there will be a change in these actual scores when they come out next year, but not from children not performing as well. It is because their performance is being devalued in this system, in the accountability system, in terms of the number of points awarded.
Yeah, I do.
Okay?
Dr. Kraft?
Yes. Yeah, we in education, we always, in the test and measurements, looked at reliability of a test and also the validity. Going back to page 5 on the ACT, now, I believe if we take these points, they add them up and average them, is this right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, and of course, the best way if we're going to do averaging, we average all the scores to get a class average. We don't stop at 59 and give you a 0. That's where the test is not valid. This system's not valid, people. You don't just automatically say if we had some people 16, 15, 14. They're not going to be averaged in with that number. They're going to be averaged with a 0. Is that fair? No, that's not fair. It's not valid. It's not a reliable evaluation system. And somebody needs to tell these people, you're off base. You're not professional educators. They couldn't pass the basic test and measurements course with this kind of lack of validity, lack of reliability, lack of fairness, and it's irritating. But I tell you, we just got to keep fighting the fight and let them know it's not fair, and it's not fair to our students to put them in a trick bag and say, hey, well, we're going to average in these zeros. We average enough zeros, and we're going to make every one of you look bad. And that's not the way, that's not the purpose of education. And unfortunately, it's sort of like in the PE class, well, we're going to put this bar at 8 feet. If you don't jump over that 8-foot bar, no matter what your background is, no matter what your physical condition is, you're going to get a 0. They're the 0 factors up there at who designed this, and it's designed to destroy a lot of good public education districts out there. And of course, with these groups of 10 or more, some of these rural districts, they might get 5 or 6 in it, and they may not even have a special group. Everybody's going to be averaged in. Do you think that's fair to them? No. But again, I see nothing in fairness with the going back to the 60s. It wasn't fair to begin with when they came up with this. And this is even less fair that they're putting before. So now, if it's not enough school failures for this, what are they going to do next? They're going to raise the bar 10 feet. If you don't jump that bar, hey, you get a 0. You know? So that's where we are today, people. We got our work cut out for us. Thank you very much.
Mr. Gaines?
I just want to mention something. I know Shellman High School is undergoing a lot of ACT prep. Ms. Boccia, can you sort of briefly share with us what Shellman High is doing right now?
With the ACT prep, there's a program called Mastery Prep, and we are trying to, I think we were doing it twice a week, and we're doing it more this year, where we're taking part of the day, a small part of the day, and each of the students is working through materials. I think Ms. Watson came and actually showed it to y'all at one point last year on what the Mastery Prep materials look like. So we're trying with students as young as the 9th graders to begin to develop some of those skills, to show them what these questions would look like, and to give them some practice and strategies to help them do better. Of course, the best preparation is within our classes themselves, but that doesn't always happen when there are certain materials that need to be covered. So this is just an added measure to try to increase the ACT scores of our students and give them the opportunities to become familiar with the types of questions and hopefully learn a few of the strategies that they need to do a little bit better on those particular assessments.
Okay.
Diana?
Okay. Mr. Egan?
Yeah, Ms. Goche. You know, unfortunately, in my line of business as an attorney, has there been any movement by, let's say, the superintendents of the different school districts to look at this? I am not an expert on this, and unfortunately, I'm still not an expert on it, because it just seems that there's so many different options that they have. And I'm looking at it, and just in my own opinion, there's 2 or 3 things, as Doc said, that are patently it's unfair to everyone to a certain extent. You know, we're going to have some school districts that may have 3 schools. It'll be much easier for them to maybe comply with everything with some other school at some other area that's got 12 or 15 schools. I know what they're trying to do, or I think I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to better the educational system so that everyone gets an opportunity to do better for themselves. But the unfortunate thing, you said it before, we're not all the same. When the good Lord made us, you know, my head may be that big, but my brain may be that big. And what I'm trying to say, we're all different. And because of that, to come out with these set of rules that are not, easiest to understand too, with all these figures and percentages. And that's what I was wondering, if there has been any type of movement that, we got to get together and let's file a lawsuit, bring it to the feds, and let the feds decide if it is.
Well, Steve, I don't really, we've been working with this for so many years, and, it's hard for me to respond. I've been in education 47 years now. I have been probably a part of every educational reform movement that has existed over the past 47 years. And that pendulum keeps swinging this way, and then it swings that way, and what becomes important, and all of a sudden, in one 5-year period, this state says we're going to prepare every student for college and cut out all vocational and career tech courses, and everyone follows the college curriculum, and this is where we're headed. Then business and industry says, wait a minute, we don't have a workforce that we need. So then that pendulum begins to swing back, and then we come over here with all of these career and tech courses to fill a need in the community, and maybe to more closely parallel some interests that some students may have. Then the pendulum is swinging this way and that way, and business and industry, and this is what bothers me. And I'm just going to say this, and Lobby, Louisiana Association of Business and Industry, has an extremely successful, well-funded lobbying group that is in every area of the political realm in our legislature, and is heavily now in the education arena. And they are forcing what they call, and many have very good intentions. Okay, the goals and the intentions are good, because your end game for all students is to increase student achievement, to give kids opportunities, to help them score at levels that they are maxing out their potential, and to allow them the opportunity to go into a profession that they want to go in, that to get them qualified so that they don't get out of school and really have nothing to hold on to. So all of that is good. But the way it is being driven, and when I talk to our local chamber, I talk to people, they get behind this movement of raising standards and say, yes, we're all for raising standards, yes, I support it. But not one of them knows anything about the details of what this is. So when you start talking about how points are awarded and how this is determined, and they said, you mean all these little, and I don't want to pick on, it depends, you're in special education for different reasons. But suppose you're in there for a cognitive disability. There is no way that you're going to score at the mastery level. So every child who takes the test who has a true cognitive disability will get a 0 on the performance piece. They can be trying, they can be maximizing their potential, but they're not going to score at that mastery level. They may not even get to that basic level if that is their true disability. That may be another reason they're in. They may be in special ed for a physical disability. Well, they wouldn't fall under that. They could score well. If you come from a low socioeconomic background, the research of the past 47 years that I've been in education shows that children who grow up in families that are on the lower end of the socioeconomic level, it's not that they're not as bright as any other child the day they were born. The opportunities and the experiences that they have had, or the lack of experiences, tends to initially put them behind as a deficit. So you're constantly trying to narrow that achievement gap, but the child who's in a home that provides the additional experiences, well, they don't stop, so they're growing too. So that gap, it's hard to narrow it. So you're working a lot in the school setting, but you can't change, I guess, what happens outside of that school day. and what supports exist for that child and what experiences that child has. And I always say, you may come in, this 5-year-old, a 4-year-old comes in with a vocabulary of 50 words, this one comes in with 500 words, and from day one, how are you going to provide the experiences to get that child who has a vocabulary of 50 words on par with what's happening over here? Those are challenges that we face every day. So if you can't get them to score at a certain level, it's not that the school isn't doing its job. You may be doing a much better job than the selective admission school that is scoring off the charts because they don't take children like this. Or a school in a more middle-class, affluent neighborhood where the majority of students attending have those experiences, those middle-class experiences that this socioeconomic realm of children may not have every day. So how do you level that playing field? Part of the ESSA plan tries to focus in on that, but they're focusing in on that with this hammer, instead of the supports that are needed. Inherently, it costs more in monetary resources and in human resources to address these needs. You take a look at an alternative school. Wouldn't it, in your mind, from a common sense approach, cost more to provide services necessary to take a child who is having such severe issues that he or she cannot function appropriately in the regular district school? Because whatever their challenges are, they're in an alternative program. There are other factors involved which hinder their academic achievement. And the only way you're going to get them to better the academic achievement is to try to solve some of these other issues and provide the supports, whether it be the mental health supports, the anger issues, the teenagers who get themselves or who in certain situations, they may be parents at that age. They may have situations in their home lives that prohibit their natural, ability to achieve in a regular setting. Well, it costs more to provide those services, but nothing takes that into effect. It's always the school's fault, the school's fault, the school's fault. So we're fighting the good fight. These systems, in many cases, are inherently unfair when you get into the details, but nobody, unless you're an educator, actually gets into these details. They don't sit down. I mean, if you would say, well, for these two children that are scoring approaching basic or unsat, you need 4 or 5 scoring advanced, which is tough to get, in order to even out to that level you need it to be. That's tough. So these systems, I mean, it's just like the growth pieces. They're different in every state. The accountability awarding of what goes into the formula itself, it's different in every state. The ESSA plan mandates that every year you measure just ELA and math. Here in Louisiana, we've decided to do all 4 core areas every year, which then kind of dilutes your resources. Many other states don't touch that. They don't do, and I'm not minimizing social studies, but they don't test social studies at all, ever. And then science is only mandated to be tested once at each level, once when they're in elementary, once when they're in high school, middle school, and once when they're in high. And you could probably use the ACT, science portion of the ACT to satisfy the high school one. Then you have all these special interest groups come out. You can't minimize social studies. We've got to have a test in that every year. So everybody caves, and so we are in a testing system. The 3rd grade social studies test, 64 pages for an 8-year-old. Okay, that he had to do the practice test, 64 pages. In the entire week of testing, you understand, every day he's being tested 3 sessions of ELA, 3 sessions of math, science, social studies. That 8-year-old is wiped out
By the end of that week, you have your grandkids, some of them crying right in the middle of all of it, because the pressure for them is overwhelming. And then you have teachers sitting there, oh my God, I got to get them to score this. Oh, what's their growth score? Oh God, I hope they score a 710. I hope they score a 720, And some of these kids are babies. Now, I'm not saying don't hold people accountable, don't assess kids, but the whole purpose of assessment was to inform instruction. It seems like we're using assessment in many cases to punish people and schools and communities, and it now becomes, we celebrate the high school as an A high school as the culmination. Once we get them to that level, if over the course of the years we can say, okay, now we've got a successful graduate, that should be the goal, not at what point did they make this jump or that jump? Where do we have them in the end? What is the end game here? But anyway, we're not going to, it's hard to change all of this. The superintendents, when we go and ask for certain things which we feel are modest in modifications, the big guns come out, lobby and their lobbyists, and partnering with some other groups of people who want pieces of this system and make it impossible, and try to paint the educational leaders as the naysayers, and they're only worried about yourselves, not the kids. Well, I'm tired of hearing that. Just like I'm tired of hearing advocates talk about what we do or don't do. Who is the adult that goes to that child's ball game? Who is the adult that provides that after-school activity for them? Who is the adult that works with them each and every day in the classroom? It's their teacher. It's not that advocate sitting down on Canal Street or uptown or in some business somewhere. The advocates for the children are in the classrooms working with the kids each day. So I hate it when they get painted, we all get painted with those broad brushes. I didn't mean to go on this kind of a rampage at this point, but it's very difficult to work within the environment that the state has created, this testing environment where the be-all and end-all is this final little letter that goes somewhere. We have superintendents saying, we're not even going to talk about that anymore. We're going to make our own, and I think this is what we're going to do this year, and I'm going to ask for your support in this. We are going to create what I think we're going to do, because I haven't talked to all my people yet. But what I want to create is our own quality profile. I want to go our business community and say, what is important to you? Our stakeholders, what is important to you? And create our version of our own report card. How many of our kids are prepared for the jobs in the workforce here in this community? How many of our kids have achieved these distinctions that Charles Cassar talked about? Our performing, none of that's measured in this thing. The performing arts, the athletics, and it's not really even the true academics, it's how they perform one day over the course of the year on that one test. So you're measuring that child on how they did on that math assessment one day in a year, and that ELA or that science or that social studies based upon some standardized test that somebody created. And that's how we judge our kids in our schools. So maybe we as a community then have to come together and say, what is important to the people of St. Bernard for our schools to produce, and pull that together. So I think we're going to work on that. We may ask some of you to help us with that.
Thank you, Ms. Fauché. I have just a couple of comments. Ditto to what all my fellow board members have already said. We're not a selective admissions system, or we don't have a selective admissions policy. We have to take every child that steps into this parish, into our schools. That's why it's called public education. We're supposed to be meeting the needs of all, those with cognitive difficulties and those without cognitive difficulties. And this measurement is so unfair and it's so invalid. And as you said, Dr. Kraft, you know, it's just not valid. You take any kind of course on measuring growth and achievement, it's just not a valid measure of achievement for our students. And it's setting up not only our system for failure, but our students for failure. And yes, students are nervous wreck taking these tests because so much emphasis are putting on it. And yes, we want high standards, but let's test them accordingly in a valid manner. You know, all of this is a very upsetting, but the last portion, Ms. Voce, that you explained to us about the urgent intervention schools, you know, how many years have educators heard, we want strict discipline in schools. We want strict discipline. Well, you get strict discipline, you suspend a child, and then we're going to be reprimanded for that? Because the teachers in the classroom, what recourse will they have when a student doesn't follow the rules, you know, to an nth degree? You know, what, you know, that's taken away, I think, a lot from our discipline program also. And so it's just counteractive, it's negative, it's not, you know, a positive form of measuring. So, you know, it's just very disheartening, and we wonder why not many of our college students are going into education anymore. You know, it's just, it's a demise of, it's a total, you know, take away from public education. And as you said, Mr. Egan, I wish we had legal recourse, and you know, you know, something has to be done, because, you know, for the state to come out with a program like this that is so measuring in such a negative way, and again, it's setting up, I think, public education for failure. And you know, you mentioned it and you said it several times, Ms. Voce, but the fact is the students can be scoring the same exact, or, you know, same score, but instead of, you know, the scoring system is going to be changed, so if what used to be mastery is no longer mastery. And, you know, and to get a 0, I mean, you know, that point is just unbelievable. You know, how, if a student only scores a 17 on an ACT, to get a 0 but not get any points at all. And then that's why I asked how many students in Louisiana, and I'll be curious to look that up tomorrow, in Louisiana get a perfect 36 per year. I mean, and nationwide, how many students get a perfect 36?
When you put a 0 in there artificially.
Yeah,
like,
that just
like that for
miscues the entire, you know, scoring system. Anyway, I think we all agree that it's unfair. You know, this is an unfair scoring method, and it's just very disheartening for all of our teachers who work so hard every day. And besides that, we want them to meet all these benchmarks and teach every day and not worry about all of this, you know, but have to concentrate on preparing lessons, and then, you know, the methods and making sure that their students are getting those lessons, but then they have these to worry about this and their scores also, you know, that's just so unfairly measured is just really, really sad. Dr. Kraft.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Darcy. In reference to LABI, Louisiana Association of Business and Industry, outside sources has sold LABI a pig in the poke, so to speak, and it's just not valid what's going on. I would suggest this: maybe our legislature that passes all these and rubber stamps these things that's coming down the pike, that we are evaluated by as a school system and evaluated by our students. Maybe they need to take this battery of tests and evaluate that I wouldn't want to give them too much. Let's start with the 4th grade test to give them. All the legislators, the House and the Senate, and then get these zeros in there, so to speak. Let them take that ACT, and they got an advantage because they got all these years of experience. Let them take that ACT, and let's publish that. Let's publish that and determine, well, should they be legislators? With LeBee, and LeBee, you know, what I'd like to do is evaluate LeBee on what they're doing to promote business and industry in the state and bringing in good paying jobs. I know we got a 2,000 job deal with a technical company that's coming in. That's good. But you know what? LeBee didn't have anything to do with that. They're too busy trying to run public education, because LeBee should be all about improving their plight in life and bringing in industry and expanding the number of employees. But let's evaluate LeBee on this. All the business and industry, let's take anyone making minimum wage, let's average a 0 in, and then we average all that in there and see how well they do. Average with a 0 for all the people that's making minimum wage. They should be able to do something to raise this, because I would venture some of these people that are loudmouths that's complaining the most, they have the most minimum wage workers in their organization. So again, let's evaluate LeBee on what they're doing to promote industry. We are one of the poorest states in the nation now. That's a reason for this, because you don't have, if we had the good paying jobs, we wouldn't be a poor state. We'd be getting in more taxes and we'd be doing things for education, so to speak. Minimum wage just won't hack it. And what are they talking about this? You don't see them talk, but again, we at the local level are the professional educators. They should let us do the job. We need to let the teachers teach, and less of this testing. 30% of the time is wasted on testing. Teaching is what it's all about, what they get from that, and the satisfaction of those students going forward. The reliability and studies and surveys have shown over the years, 50 years, we're talking about, that the best indicator of success in college is a student's high school grades that's given by a teacher test, not the ACT, not this A or B, something that the state has with this artificial, unfair, invalid evaluation program. That doesn't hack it. But the teachers know best, because they're with those students day in and day out, and they have the best interests of those students at heart. And it's so unfair to beat up. As you know, just a few years ago, we had a governor and also a state superintendent. Students are failing, teachers are failing, the school districts are failing. Well, they've got a big mouth, and I'll tell you, they were adamantly wrong in their evaluation of this. We've got, that's a bright and shining star in this state, is this educational system. And that's not from something the top down, that's from the bottom up.
Thank Dr. Kraft. Mr. Gaines?
I'll be very brief. 2 points. One, I like that model you were talking about, Ms. Foche. If I could be of any service to help you develop that, I'd be glad to help. Second, and I'm sitting here thinking the takeaways you were trying to present to us when you were showing us the evaluation. So this year, we were pretty good as far as the metropolitan area. We gained, which was not the norm. There was a lot of decreases. Next year, you have any predictions?
No.
No.
No predictions until we see how the model plays out, especially on the growth piece, because that is the unknown.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, Mr. English?
All I know is we're going to work very hard
to do well within
all.
any existing system that we have.
Do the best you can under the circumstances.
Yes.
Let me ask this to Dr. Kraft. Dr. Kraft, with the LSBA, would they have any input to address this to the state?
We're looking into some.
You're looking into it to
some
address this
options there.
issue? Okay, fine.
And, yeah, it's probably, as you say, sometimes it's a court challenge that's gonna
Right, that's
make
what
a
I'm
difference there.
trying to get at.
Because that's sometimes that's the only way you can mete out a true justice.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, appreciate
Thank
that
you.
help. Thank you, sir.
Okay, anyone else? Ms. Loche, thank you very much for that presentation and for a great job of presenting it. Okay, next item was superintendent's recommendations.
Okay.
Ms. Loche again.
Just very quickly, at the regular board meeting, a representative from Valero, we're hoping will be present. He'll be making a significant donation to our Special Olympics program. We'll have a discussion on the Sebastian Roy property, and I think Ms. Benezak will be passing out the evaluation forms to the board members, at which point that will be in the month of December. I know that we had in Super News, and we talked a little bit about the election on Saturday, but I am going to make a few comments about what has transpired this past week. On the ballot this Saturday are 3 propositions for renewals for our school system's operational millages. And let me emphasize the word renewal. This is not a new tax, as we are saying, and it will not increase anyone's property taxes. You know, this is a standard procedure where every 10 years a public body goes to the voters and says, will you renew our existing millages that we have had on the books for decades? None of this is anything new. These funds pay for the salaries and benefits for our employees, the textbooks, instructional materials, for our students, the purchase of school buses, and the general operation of the school system. The reason we are emphasizing this so much tonight is that there was a major mistake made in last Friday's St. Bernard Voice. On the front page of the Voice, Jason Brown, who is the reporter who is here tonight, who covers us for the Voice, reported correctly that these 3 propositions were continuations or renewals and not new taxes. So we thank him for doing an excellent job in the reporting in the article that appeared on the front page of the St. Bernard Voice. However, Ron Chapman, in his point of view opinion column, erroneously characterized these renewals as new taxes. Again, a major mistake on his part. He said in it, and he started out with it, and I really have to take offense to this, where I quote him saying, everyone had to know this day was coming, where he equated our buildings, in his opinion, were the Ferrari of buildings rather than the Chevy that we could afford, which I thought was a horrible metaphor, a major mischaracterization. So let me just make a few, I guess, observations. Anyone who has followed this school system's journey over the past 12 and a half years should know this, that this school board has built state-of-the-art facilities totally financed by FEMA federal dollars. No local money was spent. This school board had the vision to make sure that the building materials used in these facilities would last for generations. The terrazzo floors, the masonry block walls, very low in maintenance and easily cleaned in the event of future flooding. This school board also had, each and every one of you around this table, each and every one of you had the vision to plan ahead for the maintenance of these facilities, meaning the high-cost items like the roofs, the HVAC systems, the technology involved. by redirecting existing monies to fund the maintenance of those buildings. This school board has spent the last 12 and a half years becoming debt-free and planning to live within the existing revenues, within our means. We were probably one of the only public bodies who, since the storm, has never asked for an increase in taxes. Not once in 12 and a half years did we ask for an increase in taxes. And this school board, as it has said over and over, has absolutely no intention of asking to raise taxes to maintain our existing state-of-the-art facilities, because the plan y'all have set in motion takes care of that in a separate maintenance fund that has been set up for this purpose. Any journalist who has done his homework would know that this topic has been discussed time and time again around this horseshoe at public meetings by you as school board members, and then by me in public forums and talking with the chamber, the Economic Development Commission, and various civic groups when I've made presentations on what our master building plan would be and our plan to maintain those facilities. So let me sum it up. The St. Bernard Parish School Board is a responsible public body which has done an incredible job of rebuilding our school system with state-of-the-art facilities where students can learn in a safe and comfortable environment. They have instituted a well-thought-out, concrete, recurring plan to maintain the buildings without asking for any additional revenues. So the propositions on the ballot this Saturday are just renewals that happen every 10 years to maintain our current revenue stream. Nothing new, no increases. Now both Ron Chapman, the columnist, and Norris Babin, who happens to be with us tonight, who's the editor of the St. Bernard Voice, have apologized for this error and have promised to publish a retraction on the front page of this Friday's St. Bernard Voice. So we are asking the citizens of St. Bernard to vote Saturday on these renewal propositions. A yes vote will continue our current revenue stream and will not increase anyone's property taxes. And we all wish to thank each and every citizen in St. Bernard for the ongoing support that you have given us and the children of this parish for all of our parish public schools. So I just wanted to try to clear that up. So.
Thank you, Ms. Foche. Mr. Long?
Just one very brief comment, and I agree with Ms. Foche on everything she said. I'd also like to thank Mr. Brown for getting it right. It's a shame that Mr. Chapman got it wrong. And it's a good thing it wasn't a new tax. Because had it been a new tax, you could see where Mr. Chapman would have went. He'd have attacked our school system. And that's unfortunate. A young reporter got it right. A seasoned reporter or opinion columnist got it wrong. And that's unfortunate. And but now we know, should one day we ever have to go out for a new tax, we, as a school system, just might be attacked. And it's unfortunate. Thank you.
Dr. Kraft?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Tyson. Yeah, reading the article in a point of view there was very disappointing. And I think Mr. Chapman did take at liberty to interpret things there, because I think he had a point he wanted to follow up on, called Property Brothers. And of course, in in this scheme of things, what this is so wrong-headed and was so incorrect and improper, his editorial piece, and I can't understand why he would do it, because he's been involved in the community, and he shouldn't know more than that. And getting this so wrong as he did makes everything that he's written suspect. And I would recommend to the owner, Mr. Babin, that you cease the point of view. It's time for it to be put to bed, time to retire, because it's just not in the best interest of the parish there. And of course, anything that would create the disharmony that is created and the unrest that is created is just not acceptable. You've got a nice, great little newspaper with the St. Bernard Voice. I subscribe to it, and I get it regularly every week, and I look forward to that. But this is a low point with that editorial that Mr. Chapman wrote, and it was just wrong-headed from the start when he in his opening sentence to his final sentence. So we appreciate the paper's apology for it, but Mr. Chapman, his words will not delete what he's done, because I think it was he very well knew what he was doing. You can read that article and see, and that's unfortunate. Thank you.
Anyone else? As Ms. Voce said, Mr. Chapman has apologized to the board, and Mr. Babin has also, and the St. Bernard Voice has said they are definitely going to do a retraction in the paper. It will be hopefully in the front page to let our voters know that this is a renewal, a renewal, a renewal, a renewal. It's not a new tax, and we would appreciate that. And we ask that the papers get to the public as soon as possible before the election, that this is just a renewal for the support of the St. Bernard Parish school system, and we would appreciate that greatly. Okay, anyone else? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? Ms. Escobedo, there's a motion, seconded by Mr. Campbell. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you and good night.